everyone, today's video will be covering the Millennium Godzilla series, the third Toho Godzilla movie series. I've already covered the show in the Heisei era Godzilla series in my previous videos. After the Heisei series, Toho's produced a new Godzilla series called the Millennium series. Unlike the Heisei era series that had good monster villains, strong storylines, it was on top of the continuity. The Millennium series was more of an anthology Godzilla series. Maybe because Toho knew they could not top what the previous series did, they thought, let's just make every Godzilla series and the Millennium series a different movie rather than following a storyline with continuity. While I don't hate the Millennium series, I can respect and see why some Godzilla fans don't like the Millennium series that much. To me, the series had its highs and lows, which I'll explain later in this video. I'm not saying these are facts or true, this is just a little deep thinking right here, my own personal opinion. To start this video, I'll be talking about Godzilla 2000 Millennium. This is the 23rd movie of the Godzilla franchise, the first Millennium Godzilla movie. Yes, I know Godzilla 1998 TriStar came out before this movie. You will see a video on that eventually soon, but that was an American Godzilla movie. I'm talking about the Toho Godzilla franchise. This is separating two different Godzilla series and a different topic. It was directed by Tako Akawa, I'm not sure I'm saying his name right, once again I apologize for that, who prior to this directed 3 Godzilla movies in the Heisei series. This movie was released in 1999 in Japan, but it came out here in the USA 1 year later in 2000. This is basically Toho telling TriStar, no, this is how you make a Godzilla movie, and that you blew it, and that Toho felt insulted by TriStar. And Toho telling TriStar, we can make a better Godzilla movie than you did. I was 7 years old when this movie came out. I saw this movie in the movie theaters when it came out with my father. It was the first time I went to a movie theater where the theater was dead. It was just me, my dad, and some other father with his kid. It was the third time a Godzilla Toho movie was released here in the US since Godzilla 1985, but obviously I wasn't alive for that at that time. When I saw this movie, I was confused and not understanding, thinking that this was a follow-up sequel to the 1998 Godzilla Matthew Broderick movie. But my dad explained to me this is how Godzilla movies are made and much better. The movie has nice visual shots of Godzilla fighting the military. They don't learn their lesson. Guns and missiles don't work against Godzilla. Gee, they didn't watch the last movies to learn their lesson. The monster Godzilla fights Orga was pretty cool. This is another cool original Godzilla giant monster. Orga reminded me of The Thing. At first he was a UFO that flew around, then he turns into Orga from Godzilla's DNA. Orga trying to clone Godzilla, then Godzilla blows him up. Boom. But again, this kind of idea kind of reminds me a little bit similar to Godzilla vs. Biollante, where he fights a big giant monster with his DNA minus the human soul. Maybe I guess that's another reason why this film could get a little bit of a mixed reaction, because it's like, yeah, we already saw this done already in a previous Godzilla movie. When the character Shinoda is trying to escape the building, when it's planned to explode because of the alien UFO over the building, he opens up the elevator and slides down like Batman. It also reminds you of something out of Die Hard. Watching this movie as an adult compared to as a kid, for some reason I could not stop thinking about how this movie came out 1 year before 9/11 happened, thinking about post 9/11 Ground Zero, the victims that passed away during the 9/11 attacks. The part when Megaguirus is killed by Godzilla reminded me of Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah when he wanted Godzilla to kill him. It was a dark Godzilla movie, but it had some humorous moments sometimes in this movie. While it's not a great Godzilla movie, I enjoy and appreciate it for what it is. It was a lot better than Godzilla 1998, and a little redemption to some degree, however you want to look at it that way. It's a Godzilla movie that will have a small soft place in my heart and got me into the series, and semi-made me into a Godzilla fan that I am today. The journalist's character was likable. She didn't like the Godzilla group at first, then she grew to like them as time went on. As a kid watching the US version, I thought this was the little girl's mother, but again, it was probably the Mandela effect for me right here as a little kid. Megaguirus was a cliche businessman that we've already seen done before in previous Godzilla movies. It's not explained what his connection or fascination with Godzilla is, and why he wanted to kill Godzilla. I like the look of Godzilla, one of my favorite Godzilla look designs, definitely an upgrade from Godzilla 98 despite that's an American Godzilla movie. Probably not the best comparison, but I'm trying my best, you can get the idea. Despite the movie using a lot of practical effects and it's a guy in a rubber suit, but you see Godzilla swimming underwater, it's CGI, and honestly, it looks like crap. The characters are just okay. They're nothing special like in previous Godzilla movies, but they're not the worst characters in my own opinion. I'm not gonna lie, these characters are basically cliched. It was also cliche how they took a sample of Godzilla and studied his DNA. It's like, didn't we already see that in a previous Godzilla movie in the Heisa series? You had this team called the Godzilla Prevention Network where they ride around looking for Godzilla. The UFO hacking into computers felt like a reference to Y2K at the time when this movie came out at the end of the millennium, 1999. People freaked out and were scared and thought the world was going to end in 1999. The little girl in this movie was kind of an annoying brat, but the bond she has with her father was alright, but again, nothing special right here. This is one of the few Godzilla movies I had on VHS tape. It was an English dub. The Japanese cut was never released here in the US until the 2010s on Blu-ray. But I don't think the English dub is horrible. Again, once I've seen the Japanese cut, I can't go back to the American cut. But I can respect and understand why some people would hate the dubbing in this movie. The dubbing in the US version had its moments okay and bad. I once read they almost considered making a follow-up sequel to this movie, but due to this movie not performing well as planned, that's why Toho did a reboot instead of a follow-up sequel. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they made a follow-up sequel to this movie or any of the Millennium Godzilla movies. Would the Millennium series have been better? But we'll never know. As a kid watching this movie, I thought every Godzilla movie was a follow-up sequel before I knew about the history of this movie and the rest of the Godzilla franchise series. It may not be a great Godzilla movie, but I enjoy it for what it is. It was a start for me to understand how Godzilla movies are made. Like any Godzilla fan or being a fan of a popular iconic character, we all start somewhere. Would I recommend this one to someone who is a beginner and wants to get into Godzilla movies? Probably not. But I would still recommend this one if you're curious, if you're a die-hard core Godzilla fan. After you see the best basic Godzilla movies, also, if you're going to watch this movie, watch the Japanese cut. I've noticed some Godzilla fans, it seems to be a mixed one. Despite it has a fan following, some like it or don't like it. Again, the movie depends on the individual liking this movie or not. It's a mixed movie with a love-hate.
So I'm not crazy about Godzilla 2000. I know it has its fan base, and I've seen both cuts of the movie, and I think the Japanese cut is definitely better than the American cut, but to be honest, both versions I don't think are very good. I mean, there are things I like about it, like the three main characters are likable enough. The villain, Katagiri, is a freaking awesome character and has a pretty spectacular death scene in the end, but yeah, overall I just find this one to be kind of bland and mediocre.
Godzilla vs. Megaguirus from 2000, the 24th Godzilla movie in the Toho franchise, the second Godzilla movie in the Millennium series. This is not a follow-up sequel to Godzilla 2000 Millennium. The movie opens up with scenes from the original Godzilla movie, but instead of the 54 Godzilla version, they use the Millennium Godzilla version. I'm not sure why that is. Fans point this out as an alternative universe sequel to the first Godzilla movie. But what doesn't make any sense is, how come they don't mention the Oxen Destroyer from the first movie? There's this female soldier character who wants revenge against Godzilla because one of her soldier friends saved her life and sacrificed himself, and he died. Yeah. I've already seen this done before and better in Godzilla 1984 and Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. The character's not bad by all means. She could have been written better. I did like the part when she bonds with the little kid who found dragonflies that create Megaguirus. This part was alright. How she teaches him how that when you're afraid of something, you don't run away, you face your fears, which, again, I already know this in life. It's like, that didn't teach me anything new. Anyway, the character Kudo was an alright character, but again, cliche. He was likable, smart, and funny. He likes Karago, but the way he hits on her is kind of creepy and awkward, especially how he has a picture on his computer. That is weird. And yet they hire this guy to stop Godzilla and save the world. Next time hire Buster Keaton from The General. But I thought it was funny when Kiriko kicks his ass when she's working out, and this is why she stays in tip-top shape as a soldier. It was interesting the first time someone on Godzilla put a homing device on him. You don't see that a lot in Godzilla movies, someone getting close to Godzilla or being on top of Godzilla. These group of scientists are working with the military on opening a portal to send Godzilla to trap in another dimension to get rid of Godzilla for good. The actress Yuriko Hoshi plays a scientist in this movie who wants this project to go forward. This actress was in 2 Showa Godzilla movies. She was in Godzilla vs. Mothra and Ghidorah 3-Headed Monster. When they hire this scientist, he says we can fight Godzilla in space. Didn't we already see that in previous Godzilla movies? Invasion of Astro Monster and Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Megaguirus kills a teenage couple in an alleyway, like something out of a horror movie. Instead of a serial killer, it was a big giant bug monster. Seeing Godzilla jump and body slam on Megaguirus looked like something out of the Showa-era Godzilla series. The fight scene between Godzilla and Megaguirus is one of the best giant monster fight scenes I've seen thus far in a Godzilla movie. Well, this movie's not bad or horrible. It's a cliche Godzilla movie where they were repeating themselves and don't do anything different. Well, the portal opening to another dimension idea was somewhat of a different concept idea. Also, Godzilla fighting a big giant insect feels like something out of a 1950s or 1960s sci-fi big giant bug B movie, but on a bigger budget. The characters are cliche and are forgettable. It also could not make it up its mind they wanted to make this a serious tone or goofy campy Godzilla movie. The concept had potential of opening a portal to another dimension was not done well. One of those ideas that have been done better in other movies on other portal dimensions. The CGI is crap, does not hold up today. Not horrible the worst, it wasn't the best or one of my favorite Godzilla movies, but that's just me. I found this one to be very bland and forgetful. I'll probably never rewatch this one again unless I want to give it a second chance. I'll admit, there wasn't a lot I had to say about this movie.
So, Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, I like this one a little bit better than 2000, but it's also not a great movie. My biggest problem with this one is just missed opportunities, because this had, honestly, kind of a brilliant premise. Like, this idea of the military creating black holes, they could have done some really interesting stuff with that, and honestly, when you think about it, creating a black hole, that could put the human race in an existential crisis even worse than what Godzilla represents, and the movie really doesn't play into that at all. And also, because this one deals with the concept of other dimensions, they could have established a multiverse with this movie and maybe even tried to tie in all the different Godzilla continuities into one multiverse. I think that would have been pretty cool, but again, the movie doesn't do anything with that. But I definitely think whoever made this movie, or the people who made this movie, have definitely read Stephen King's The Mist, because the main premise is the military opens up a black hole, or one of these dimensional gateways, and a giant dragonfly comes through, and it's like, yeah, that sounds basically like the plot of The Mist.
Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, giant monsters, all start out attack from 2001, the 25th Godzilla movie in the franchise, the 3rd Godzilla movie in the Millennium series. Fans refer to this one as GMK because this is a long title to say. This one was definitely an improvement, much better than Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. It was one of the best Godzilla movies in the Millennium series. Once again, this is not a follow-up sequel to the previous 2 Godzilla movies in the Millennium series. It's a sequel to the first Godzilla movie from 1954 and ignores the other ones. Unlike the Heist series that was consistent with the storyline, the Millennium series did not follow any continuity storyline. It was more on the anthology side. It's also odd that they referenced Godzilla in 1998. I didn't think that was possible, because Godzilla in 1998 was an American Godzilla movie. And no, this does not count as a sequel to Godzilla 1998. This one was fresh and original Godzilla movie. In a way, it was like a modern-day remake and spiritual tribute to Destroy All Monsters from the Showa era. The movie was directed by Shizuki Kaneko. I'm probably not saying his name right. Once again, I apologize for that. Who prior to this directed the 90s Gamera movies. The main character is Yuri, who is a journalist who was looked down upon, dominated by men, and her boss doesn't listen or treat her well. But despite the way she is treated and looked down upon, Yuri is a strong character, very likable, very believable, very sympathetic. Her father's a Japanese military man, and he survived the events of Godzilla from the first movie when he was a little boy. The way he tells the story is powerful, scary, and bone-chilling. It's like Quint's speech from Jaws. He's the real hero of this movie, and he's a badass. He's basically the action hero of this movie, but minus the funny one-liners. He's very brave and very heroic. Just like Dr. Serizawa, he makes the ultimate sacrifice when he goes underwater to fight Godzilla. The only difference is he survives, whereas Dr. Serizawa died. This is what makes the movie, the father and daughter relationship. It's very well written, melodramatic. It's another example of human characters well written like the first Godzilla movie. The old man character was another good character, knew a lot and very knowledgeable about Godzilla and the other giant monsters. No one believes when he tells people that Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah will come back, destroy the world, and rule the earth. There's an M. Night Shyamalan twist about this character. I won't spoil it, go watch and be shocked. He was played by Hideo Yamamoto, who was in other previous Godzilla movies in the Showa era series. Yuri's boss was a little funny, even though despite I mentioned earlier that he was a jerk to Yuri sometimes. Kyle Mamani has a small part in this movie, who was once married to Ken Watanabe, who later got to be the American Godzilla Monsterverse series. Godzilla look at this movie looks like a combo of a ghost and a zombie. His eyes are blank, he has no eye pupils. It's probably one of the only few times I've seen that in a Godzilla movie. His look is alright, but I still like the look in the Godzilla 2000 Millennium movie a little more. But that's just me. Not a bad look by all means, just personal preference and a different taste right there. Fans refer to this Godzilla version as Ghost Godzilla. The first time we've seen that in a Godzilla movie. Also a spirit of a ghost and a supernatural. In past Godzilla movies, it was science, UFOs, nuclear physics weapons. This movie has a little horror element to it to some degree. My friend Bill Burns, who you see on this channel, is a huge diehard Godzilla fan. He wrote a book on horror movies. He has a chapter dedicated to Godzilla movies. He mentioned this is one of his favorite Godzilla movies, how it's very Lovecraftian. Also, I highly recommend you go check out his thoughts of this movie on my friend Christian's YouTube channel. The monsters of this movie are seen as gods. They bring back Baragon from Frankenstein Conquers the World. This is the second appearance in a Godzilla movie for him since Destroy All Monsters. The movie's a little dark humor moments when Baragon is attacking. This one couple spot him, and the husband tells the wife, "Let's take a photo and then run." You don't see that a lot in Godzilla movies. If I was in this situation, forget the photo. Run away and get to safety. That's more important than a stupid photo of a giant monster. The movie has some cool, awesome, practical special effects of the monsters fighting each other. It's fantastic. And again, they use CGI in certain scenes and shots of the movie. And once again, the CGI looks like crap sometimes. Seeing the monsters attack and seeing the natural destruction is a little homage to the first Godzilla movie of a natural disaster. King Ghidorah is the good guy in this movie. Despite in previous Godzilla movies, he was the villain. But I guess they figured, let's change that up. He was a protector of the Earth. Just like Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, it has another commentary on teenage youth, kids' egos being cocky. Also, just like the first Godzilla movie, The Return of Godzilla in 1984, there's a little social commentary, nuclear missiles and nuclear war. It makes a statement on Japan's sins past coming back to haunt them for their crimes they committed during World War II. My friend Christian will explain this part when you see his thoughts on this movie. This is another movie that makes you think if they made a follow-up sequel to this movie, who knows how the rest of the Millennium series could have worked out with a follow-up storyline from this movie onward. It was a fun movie. I really enjoyed it a lot. I can see why it's one of the best Godzilla movies, one of the best Godzilla Millennium series. Definitely can see myself going back to rewatch this movie many more times in the near future. It was a fresh, unique Godzilla movie. It took the giant monsters character in a different direction that was done very well.
So, Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, or GMK, I think is easily the best film in the Millennium series. Now, the big thing with the Millennium series is it's an anthology series where each film is in its own continuity. There's no continuity between any of the films, well, with the exception of two, but we'll get to that. But this is the only one that actually takes advantage of the fact that this is an anthology Godzilla series, because this is a very unique and different take on Godzilla. Like, I would almost describe this as an Elseworlds Godzilla movie where basically in this movie, Godzilla is a literal demon, and this gets into magic and the supernatural and ghosts. Like, I thought that was really unique for a Godzilla film. I also like the idea that in this movie, Godzilla is essentially possessed by all the people killed by the Japanese during World War II. And it's almost this idea of the sins of Japan's past coming back to bite them in the ass. And while most of the Godzilla movies are meant to be more of a metaphor for what was done to Japan during World War II, this is actually a metaphor for what Japan did to other countries, because people forget Japan committed a lot of war crimes during World War II, and this is one of the few Godzilla movies that actually acknowledges that, yeah, Japan was not innocent during the Second World War, and it's this whole idea that Godzilla is almost literally a divine punishment on the people of Japan for forgetting their past, for forgetting the horrible things they've done to other countries, but also forgetting about the horrible things that were done to themselves, like the atomic bombings. And then in this film's universe, you find out people are even forgetting about what Godzilla did back in 1954. And the film is also really funny too. Like, you have a lot of satirical humor. Like, there's a point in the movie when Baragon is in the background and you have this husband and wife, and the wife is like, let's run away, but first take a picture of me with Baragon in the background. And I felt like that was definitely meant to be sort of satirical of how people kind of trivialize tragedies. But yeah, GMK is an excellent movie, and yeah, if you haven't seen this one, again, I think it's easily the best of the Millennium Godzilla series.
How many of these are you doing?
As many as